Here we go. Welcome to Read the Line Celebrity Insider Interview. And boy, do I have an industry insider for everyone today. He is known on Twitter. He's a social media standout when it comes to handicapping golf courses and the events. He writes for thelines.com. You can check him out week in and week out. That's for sure. His name is John Haslbauer. John, welcome. And thanks for being my celebrity insider for the FedEx St. Jude Championship. Stage 1, FedEx Cup playoffs. What's your first impression? How excited are you to get this thing going?
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, Keith. Thank you for having me on the lines and read the line combination that everyone's been asking for years on end. We did it. I'm excited for this event. We were just talking. We're both Northeast guys living in Jersey. So it is kind of a shame that we've lost the Northern Trust, which was always in our backyards up here. But this is a really great tournament. Everything they do for the St. Jude charity is awesome. And I am looking forward to making some donations that way this year, hopefully with some extra pocket change from the gambling winnings if all goes right.
You know, I hate to get on a tangent, but how do they not have a premier PGA Tour event in the New York City area, in the metropolitan area? When we lost that last year, I went right to the schedule makers at the PGA Tour and I said, what is going on? They said, well, you have the Travelers. I said, that's Connecticut. What are we talking about? Right? I mean, we lost this. The good news is that we have a place that's going to determine a great champion this week. The top 125 are down in Memphis at TPC Southwind. When I say TPC Southwind, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think of this golf course?
I would probably say Bermuda because it's just a very pure Bermuda course, and the greens, all the comments from the players are that you're gonna be hard pressed to find a more pure rolling surface than the greens they have here. They're extremely firm, extremely fast. The rough is quintessential Bermuda, where if you find it, you're gonna have a really hard time controlling the ball out of it. And when you combine like just nasty rough and firm and fast greens and those conditions together, it becomes a little bit of a grind, a little bit of a scrambling premium, which I love to see. I like when bogey is in play on any given course. I'm sick of these birdie fests at this point. So it's going to be a nice, true tee to green test. I think it's going to favor some of these Florida residents, guys who just live and grew up on Bermuda. We were talking about that before that this grain is very different from the Northeast stuff that we're used to playing. And a lot of the other like California Northeast guys are used to playing. So we'll see how that plays out. But you look down the list of past winners of this tournament, they all seem to have some sort of Florida, Southeast, Bermuda connection.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And, you bring up an important point about, bogey avoidance. But I also think this is kind of one of those places for like double bogey avoidance because 11 of the holes have water hazards that are in play. And, I think that a lot of times keeps that winning score in the mid-teens there rather than turning it into a birdie fest. When you start to think about, you talked about the type of guy, right, that we're targeting. But how about the type of course that we're targeting? What other places pop in your mind right away when you start to think about Bermuda grass, you start thinking about needing to hit fairways, being strategic, staying out of the water? What courses are you using as comps this week?
Yeah, I think for all the reasons you just mentioned, actually TPC Sawgrass is one that I think has had some pretty strong correlation. We've seen Justin Thomas win at both. Webb Simpson's been pretty competitive at both of these. A course where if you're super accurate and you can play out of the fairway, avoid the rough, avoid the water hazards with any significant misses, you're going to set yourself up to score well here. And both you need a strong short game around Bermuda surfaces, around Bermuda greens, Bermuda greenside complexes. So I think that's a really interesting one to look at. It's kind of ironic that Cam Smith was your winner this year there because it's a daunting off the tee course at Sawgrass, and he was exposed off the tee, lost 5 strokes there, but he made up for it by being an elite Bermuda putter, and I think that can be a formula here as well. So I am looking for guys who've done well on the Florida swing specifically. East Lake is another course that's a good comp. It has the same Zoysia fairways and Champion Bermuda greens. So harder to pull data off of East Lake because it's always such a limited field and the best players just are there and tend to play well. So hard to take anything significant takeaways out of Eastlake, but I would say Sawgrass and Eastlake are where I'm starting.
I love the Sawgrass comparison there. I was going with the Honda because you got guys like Berger that play really well there. Very difficult off the tee. A lot of danger awaiting everybody. Of course, Bermuda grass, wall to wall. Seems to be very similar players. Now, not as many Florida guys, oddly enough, play in the Honda, but it's certainly one of those golf courses that I'm right with you there on lockstep. The lines, read the line. It's a perfect synergy. I move on. All right. Let's talk about the recent history of this event. Since they went WGC, so it used to be the week before. The St. Jude used to always be the week before the U.S. Open. We didn't get great fields. Then all of a sudden, the PGA Tour elevates it to a WGC in the middle of the summer. They send these guys to Memphis where it's 100 degrees. And now we're getting Brooks, we're getting JT, we're getting, guys that play on teams, national, international teams like Abe Answer winning this thing. Is it going to be, with such an elite field, one of those things where, I think the average winning odds since it went to a WGC was like 21-1. For your card, not mentioning names, are you favoring the chalk just because that reason, that because it's such a stern test and it's such an elite field, do you have to lean that way?
Yeah, I think subjectively, I tend to lean towards the top names in events like these where the stakes are very clear. You'd like to think that every player is motivated to win every single week, but it's a long season. There are certain events where a favorite walks in to an in-between event and it's just trying to tune up and you don't realize it. We're in the playoffs now, and it's very important to finish high and get that seeding to get yourself in the top 30. You look at what Tony Finau did last year. He won the Northern Trust, and all of a sudden he was a top 5 seeding the following week of the BMW. You look at what Patrick Cantlay did at the BMW. He wins that one event, and all of a sudden he goes on to win Tour Champion and the Player of the Year, which typically goes to whoever is the Tour Champion. So there's a lot at stake this week. They increased the purses. I think it's going to have everybody's full attention, and when the game's best are all in one place on a stern test, the cream does tend to rise to the top.
Yeah, I'm favoring motivation big time in my card this week, especially my outrights, for sure. I think that there are certain guys that have a lot to prove, and they also realize the playoffs are only 3 weeks, and that staggered start in the third week basically determines everything. And since it seems like there's a lot of conversation lately, John, about money in golf, this is the biggest payday of the year. So I think people are pretty they're pretty inspired to put on their competitive hats for the next 3 weeks and try to figure this thing out. All right, before we get into who you think might play well or will play well this week, let's talk about the weather. What are you hearing from down in Memphis? What are the course conditions like? What kind of weather do we expect? What have they had? Break it down for me.
Yeah, I was checking the weather this morning. It doesn't look like it'll be like a significant impediment to the week. I think they have some rain in the forecast on Thursday, but the wind is pretty moderate. It is TPC south wind, and they do tend to just get swirls of it. So I think wind will play a bit of a factor, but it doesn't seem like it's hard to forecast wind, but it doesn't seem like it's a significant factor, or at least a significant wave advantage between the morning or afternoon from what I've seen so far. Always something to monitor throughout the week, but I think, if you get a lot of rain, then it makes this course a bit easier. It takes some of the firmness out of the greens. From what I'm seeing, it doesn't appear that they're going to get, a downpour or anything like that. So I think it will still be fairly tough conditions for them.
Yeah, I'm seeing rain early in the week, but not a ton of it. So probably just primo for scoring conditions for the weekend for these guys to go after each other, which should be entertaining. There's no doubt about that. 55 guys have to go home. They're going to cut to the top 70 when it goes to the BMW a week from now. And I think that's really going to make a difference as far as how hard these guys are going to go at it on Thursday and Friday. There's no doubt about that. Let's talk big picture. Let's start with the names at the top. I think you and I are both kind of what sounds like we're leaning towards that way, but we'll go middle tier and long shots in a second. But at the top, who do you like coming out of TPC Southwind this week and, celebrating the kids at the St. Jude's Children's Hospital?
Yeah, I think from a betting perspective, I'm going to have one bet between like the 18 to 22 to 1 range. I think Rory is set up really well for this, and he's a deserving favorite. I'm not going to bet him at 10 or 11 to 1. But his ball striking was perfect last year, and he had just one of his worst short game outings. So he's definitely a deserving favorite, somebody to watch out for in this field. But guys I'm looking for to start my betting card with are probably either Justin Thomas or Cameron Smith, I think is kind of where I'm leaning right now. Justin Thomas obviously has won this event recently. I like the players comp. You would not think of him as somebody that's going to thrive on a positional course, but for whatever reason, he seems to bring his best stuff to this event. Another Florida resident that just seems to sort of be half the field is probably Florida residents, but there's something to be said about familiarity with Bermuda, and his odds are drifting. He did not have a very good links stretch at the Scottish and Open Championship, so I think that's factored into his odds. I'm happy to look past that. I think if you look at a guy like even like a Sung Jae Im, who was quite bad at the Scottish and the Open, then comes back to more familiar grounds and goes T2, T2. So I think there is something to be said about kind of overlooking links golf as a very unique beast, where if you didn't look so great there, you can kind of look past it. And then lastly, Cameron Smith. Obviously a lot of speculation this week with the live ties. I don't really understand the merit of fading Cameron Smith because of live. If you're going to live, it's because you want the money, and now you're playing in a PGA Tour event with a ton of money at stake. So I think he's plenty motivated. He is second to Scotty Scheffler right now in the FedEx standings and in the Player of the Year conversation. If he wins one of these playoff events, I think you have to jump past Scotty Scheffler. So he's had the best year of his career, and he's in position right now where one more win could give him Player of the Year honors.
Now, one of the skills needed around this place, we mentioned it earlier, was getting the ball in the fairway. Not the strongest trait of Cam Smith. But I mean, he is the best scrambler on the PGA Tour and the best putter. So, I mean, I could definitely be talked into that. I'm going to throw a name out at you. And I know it's a controversial name, but I want you to think about motivation. And I know that TPC Southwind favors faders off the tee. How do you feel about how Jon Rahm is going to finish out this golf season?
I had a feeling you were going that route. Yeah, I mean, he is drifting to, I think, 22 to 1 is the longest I've seen on him this week. That's kind of crazy to think about with Jon Rahm in a good field that he could drift that far. His results at this event have been pretty average, I would say, especially by his standards. I think that's also factored into his price. It's just been one of those years where he hasn't been able to put it all together at once. When his tee to green game is clicking, he can't hit a putt. When he's hitting a ton of putts, he's driving it all over the place. But you would have to feel pretty good about Rahm, on any given course at 20 to 1 plus odds. But there's a lot of guys in this range right around him, like a Tony Finau, who are just in better form than him right now. So he's kind of definitely, like you said, a polarizing topic, what to do with Jon Rahm this week.
You bring up a good point there. Motivation versus recent form. All right. How would you weigh that? How would you weigh the difference between the two? Or does motivation not matter as much as recent? I mean, how do you break that down in your own mind when you're writing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of going off the pretense that everyone's motivated in the playoffs. Some are more motivated than others. I think the most motivated players are going to be the guys on the cusp of that, that top 70 to get into the next round. And golf, motivation can kind of go two ways with is it too much pressure? Are you playing too tight? Are you not playing loose enough to really play your game? And every player is different in that sense. Some guys rise to the moment, need that pressure as motivation. Other guys play tighter, and it's not great. I mean, Austin Smotherman might be a good example of that. Somebody who was motivated that week and just had a lot of pressure on his shoulders. So I think it goes both ways. I'm going to assume that everybody towards the top of the board knows that they're in position where if they win this week, they can really win the playoffs because there's just so many points at stake this week.
Hey, as a PGA professional, I love when people invest in these players like an Austin Smotherman. And I mean, to carry the weight of the Twitter world on your shoulders, he's no Atlas, he proved, right? But it does create quite sensational drama. Speaking of some
Yeah,
other guys that can create some drama, give me some middle tier guys that you're eyeing for TPC Southwind.
I think Sam Burns at 35-1 is a guy that makes a lot of sense here. Has the Bermuda reputation. 3 of his first 4 career wins have come on Bermuda courses. Sanderson Farms, very similar. Green Complex is only 200 miles down the road from where we're playing this week. So very similar agronomy to what we're going to see this week. And then, we see what he's done at Innisbrook as well with 2 Valspar championships. That's also very pure Bermuda greens, where you look at his putting history at the Valspar, it is staggering. He's gained at least like 6 strokes every time he's gone there. I've never seen putting history on a given course anything like that. So with Burns, if you put him on Bermuda and he starts to get it rolling, he can really explode. That's important this week. He lost in the playoff last year. He had a really good chance to win this event, and he is showing that he has some pretty sticky course history at the places that suit his game. Another guy not exactly known for his precision off the tee, more of a bomber, but for whatever reason, he has found success here, at least when he was here last year, put himself in contention. So I think it's a good number, 35-1 on Sam Burns.
Anybody else there in the middle? I read your article this week, the preview, right? Anybody else you want to talk about?
Yeah, so a couple other guys, Billy Horschel, and just fitting that Florida, Bermuda narrative. I know we're playing in Memphis, but again, there's just a lot of overlap with the Florida guys. Horschel, I'm seeing around 50 to 55-1. That's pretty much right where I expected him to be in a field this loaded. Won the Memorial, so there's no doubt he can go into a big guy event and take it down. A former tour champion, very outspoken in the past about getting motivated for the FedEx playoffs. He's kind of becoming this understudy to Rory, ambassador of the PGA Tour, guy who's stepping up in interviews and talking down on Liv and defending the PGA Tour. So he believes in this stuff. And you want to talk about motivation, I feel like there's very few guys who are more motivated by the FedEx Cup playoffs and really want to win a tour championship than Billy Horschel, who's done it, and one of the crowning achievements of his career. So I think he'll be very motivated and suits the course well. He's been treading very well off the tee. Just a couple other names. Hideki Matsuyama is a guy I'm leaning towards betting. Odds drifting due to the injury. Withdrew early, I believe, from the Rocket Mortgage. But if he's healthy, it's a game that really suits him very well. Does well in the comp courses we were talking about. Not necessarily a guy you would think is a Bermuda guy, but you talk about point and shoot golf. This guy's crazy accurate with the ball striking. So a guy to watch, and a number that's drifting strictly due to the injury speculation. So if he is healthy, it could be some high upside there.
Now, I know this place, it's an elite field. It's probably going to be an elite winner, but we got to look a little further down the board. It hasn't been a season for a lot of long shots, but I know you hit on one at the John Deere, 80-1 when you got JT Poston, right? So you have an affinity for being able to pick guys that will contend further down the board. Is there a name or two on the long side that you like?
Yeah, I would say the guy I like the most in the long shot territory is definitely Sahith Theegala. I've got him at 150-1. I think he's living in that 100 to 130 range now. A guy, again, we talk about Sanderson Farms as a comp in this area. That was really his coming out moment on the PGA Tour, and I believe his second start of the year. He finished top 10, had an overnight lead going into Sunday. But a player who really leans on his driver off the tee and his driving iron. So if you need to lay back off the tee, he's very comfortable hitting that 2-iron of his, finding the fairway. And he's a really crafty short game player. He actually reminds me of like a young Jordan Spieth, where if he gets himself in a sort of auspicious situation, he's got the bag of shots in his arsenal to just scramble. It really fun watching him at the Waste Management, hitting out of these cactus native areas and just finding a way to get up and down from them. I'm not saying he is Jordan Spieth. He's still got to get his first career win, but really exciting player to watch. I think he's somebody that's going to shine in a playoff atmosphere and be motivated, because he is right on that cusp, but he needs to do a little something this week to get himself into the BMW next week.
Man, what an amazing insight. Folks, that's why he's the PGA tout, the man, the myth, the legend from Twitter. We brought him to you today for Read the Line Celebrity Insider interview. John, I can't thank you enough for being a great friend in the industry and for coming on today and sharing some of your insights. Thanks, man.
Absolutely. Anytime, Keith. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you'll be back soon. That fall run, it's just one of those areas that screams to me that we need some more PGA tout.
Anytime, my friend. You know where to find me.